What's going on YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Chief Walking Bird at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history, definition, scripture, information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell, and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. Hey, curious minds. Ever wonder who led America before George Washington? Hold on tight, because I'm about to drop some forgotten history bombs on you. Before George Washington became the first president in 1789, there were actually 14 men who held the title of president under the Articles of Confederation. 8 of these men were Moors, Nubian men with dark skin who were native to Turtle Island. The Articles of Confederation was the first constitution of the United States, establishing the country's national government after the American Revolution. The Articles of Confederation established a weak central government and a loose political union between the 13 states. The document was created to coordinate the war effort and preserve the state's independence and sovereignty. The Articles of Confederation included the following features: weak central government. The national government was given only the powers that the colonies had previously recognized as belonging to the king and parliament. Each state retained its own sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and any powers not delegated to the national government. Each state had one vote in Congress, regardless of population. The Articles of Confederation did not include a president, as the states feared another George III might threaten their liberties. The national government could not impose taxes, so it had to request money from the states. The national government could not regulate interstate commerce or impose tariffs on foreign imports. The Articles of Confederation were in effect from 1781 to 1789, when they were replaced by the Constitution of 1787. As school children, we all learned that the Revolutionary War started in 1775, and the founding date for the United States is 1776. We also learned to refer to George Washington as the father of our nation, but he didn't become president until 1789. So, who ran things in the interim? To answer that question, we have to consider that the system of government through the war and first years of nationhood was a bit different from what the Constitution gave us when it was ratified in 1787. After the war and before the Constitution was ratified, the United States operated under the Articles of Confederation. Until the Articles of Confederation were adopted in 1781, the Continental Congress was the chief governing body for the fledgling United States, and its president was the highest ranking office holder in the country. After the Articles were adopted, its president was the highest ranking officer. In both instances, the president's job, though, was much closer to that of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Still, if the buck stopped anywhere, it would have been on the congressional president's desk. Consequently, just for the sake of digging into a bit of arcane American history, we can consider the 14 men who served as presidents of the Continental Congress and the Confederation Congress as the rough equivalent, at least in rank, of today's chief executive. 8 of these presidents were Nubian and native to Turtle Island. What was George Washington's real name? A lot of people don't know, but George Washington's name was never George Washington. His name was George Augustine of Barbados. George Washington was a British general. They changed his name in 1787 to hide the fact that he wasn't from America. They add Washington to his name to try and connect him with the Washita nation of Moors. They are all criminals and liars. All. The truth is about to come out. Article 2, Section 1, Function and Selection. Clause 5, Qualifications. No person, except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States, at the time of the adoption of this Constitution, shall be eligible to the office of President. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the United States. The U.S. Constitution states that the President must be a natural-born citizen of the United States, be at least 35 years old, have been a resident of the United States for 14 years. Are all the U.S. presidents related? You see, back in 2009, a young girl by the name of Brigitte Davignon made the news for having discovered that every single U.S. president, except one, is the direct descendant of King John of England. Some people even start wondering about whether there really are secret societies that control the world or ancient bloodlines that continue to hold on to power. Well, here's the thing. The answer to the question, are all the U.S. presidents related? Is in fact, yes. What do Barack Obama, Thomas Jefferson, George W. Bush, and the other past U.S. presidents have in common? Besides holding the coveted title of Commander-in-Chief, it appears that all of them but one are cousins. The remarkable discovery was made by 12-year-old Brigitte Davignon of Salinas, California, who created a groundbreaking family tree that connected 42 of 43 U.S. presidents to one common and rather unexpected ancestor, King John of England. King John, also known as John Lackland, is renowned for signing the Magna Carta in 1215, which limited the monarch's power and helped form the British Parliament. John's other claim to fame, or infamy, is that he was depicted as the villain in the Robin Hood tales. Common grandfather. The 12-year-old traced the lineages of nearly all of the U.S. presidents to King John, the signer of the Magna Carta. Davignon, a 7th grader at Monte Vista Christian School in Watsonville, started the project in hopes of tracing back her own bloodline in France. But somewhere along the way, she decided to take her genealogical quest to the highest level. In order to create the family tree, the 12-year-old spent months scouring through over 500,000 names in search of the presidential Adam. Her 80-year-old grandfather, who has been tracing roots for nearly 6 decades, helped her make the presidential links. Davignon started with the first U.S. president, George Washington. She traced both the male and female family lines to make the connection. Prior to Davignon's discovery, genealogists were only able to link 22 families of presidents, likely because they only focused on male bloodlines. The only former commander-in-chief not linked to King John is the 8th president, Martin Van Buren, who had Dutch roots. The teen also found out that she is the 18th cousin of President Obama. She even wrote to her newfound relative a letter to share her findings with him. So far, however, Davignon said she received only a generic response from the White House. Davignon created a poster of the presidential family tree and is selling signed copies of it in hopes of raising enough money to make a trip to Washington, D.C. The middle school student says her goal is to hand deliver a replica of her family tree to the president. I think we just all go back somewhere. It's just a matter of proving it, she said. Let's dive into a few of them. First up, Peyton Randolph of Virginia. He was lawyer. Before becoming president of the First Continental Congress, Randolph served as a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses and as the state's attorney general. He was unanimously elected to the office of congressional president, and he served 2 terms. He was a good friend of George Washington and a first cousin once removed of Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson didn't consider Randolph fit for leadership, saying, "He was indeed a most excellent man, but heavy and inert in body. He was rather too indolent and careless for business." Thomas said Randolph was an important addition to the Congress because of his reputation as a political moderate. Randolph served in the Continental Congress 3 times between 1774 and 1775 and was president twice. Ill health forced his resignation in 1775, and he died later that year while dining with Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia the night after a congressional meeting. Congress paused their proceedings to show their respect at his funeral. Could it be that they finished him off because he was a dark-skinned Moorish brother? They say his death was due to a cerebral brain hemorrhage. They made him white in the history books. Next, Henry Middleton from South Carolina, a South Carolinian. Henry Middleton, a dark-skinned Moor, stepped in as the second president. Middleton was one of the largest landowners in South Carolina. He owned some 50,000 acres near Charleston, and he held some 800 white slaves or indentured servants, according to an article about him in the Dictionary of American Biography. Despite some similarities to enslavement, indentured servants ultimately attained their freedom once they completed their contract, while enslaved people were permanently denied their freedom unless they could obtain the means to purchase themselves or successfully escape. Most of all of these enslaved people were really POW, who were native to Turtle Island. White servitude was one of the major institutions in the economy and society of early colonial British America. In fact, more than half of all the white immigrants to the British colonies sold themselves into bondage for a period of years in order to migrate to the New World. Before the Revolution, he served as a justice of the peace and as a member of the Commons House of Assembly. Middleton, a delegate to the First Continental Congress, served as president after Randolph fell ill. Like many in South Carolina, he opposed declaring independence from Great Britain and resigned from the Second Continental Congress just a few months before the Declaration of Independence was adopted. He returned home, and in 1776, he and his son, Arthur, served on the committee that wrote a temporary constitution for South Carolina. Middleton was captured during the Siege of Charleston and accepted, becoming a British subject again, according to the South Carolina Encyclopedia. Because of his history as a patriot, he wasn't penalized as so many loyalists were after the war. They made him white in the history books. John Hancock, a name we all know, was the 3rd president, famous for his bold signature on the Declaration of Independence. Hancock was a key figure in the Revolution and served until 1777. Keep in mind, John Hanson was a brother. Might I add all the dark-skinned brothers were Freemason? So, If there were no so-called Black Masons until Prince Hall, what lodge was these 8 brothers a part of? I'm just saying. Prince Hall received his Masonic chapter, known as African Lodge number 459, on September 29th, 1784. African Lodge number 459 is key here, showing you that there was 458 African lodges before Prince Hall Lodge. Not to mention, this must have been called Africa doing 1784. They're right. It wasn't any black men lodges back then, because black people, the label, wasn't applied until later. But anyway, John Hancock probably is the most familiar name of all 14. He served as the 3rd president of the Continental Congress. Graduating from Harvard at age 17, Hancock worked as a young man in his family's mercantile business, according to the National Constitution Center. Hancock was among those who took part in the Boston Tea Party, where dirty Moors dressed up like Native American and dumped tea into the ocean. John Hancock also duped the British into believing 10,000 armed colonists were ready to march on Boston if they didn't evacuate the city. During the war, he helped organize the Navy and raise money to pay for the war. Hancock was named president when Middleton declined permanent election to the position in 1775, and he served until 1777. Hancock was still president of the Continental Congress when the Declaration of Independence was adopted. According to legend, Hancock put such a large signature on the document so that King George III could read his name without putting on his glasses. They made him white in the history books. Henry Laurens, the 4th president, signed the Articles of Confederation and later negotiated the Treaty of Paris. His journey included imprisonment in the Tower of London. Henry Laurens was a dark-skinned Moor. He served in the Second Continental Congress from November 1777 to December 1778 and was one of the men who signed the Articles of Confederation. Laurens was a rice planter, merchant, and white slave trader who owned the largest white slave trading house in North America. In 1780, he was commissioned to travel to Holland to negotiate a treaty and a loan, but he was captured by the British Navy and taken to London, where he was imprisoned in the Tower and sentenced to be beheaded as a traitor. According to an article about him at the Library of Congress's website, Laurens served 14 brutal months and was finally released in exchange for Lord Cornwallis during a prisoner exchange after the Battle of Yorktown. He would serve as one of the diplomats who negotiated the Treaty of Paris, which officially ended the Revolutionary War. They made him white in the history books. John Jay, the 5th president, became the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and was instrumental in foreign affairs. He also helped pass a gradual emancipation bill in New York. John Jay, the New Yorker, who would become the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, was the 5th president of the Continental Congress. He served from December 1778 to September 1779. Author of 5 Federalist Papers, he was the first Secretary of Foreign Affairs, equivalent of today's Secretary of State. Jay also was a slave owner, though he did succeed in getting a gradual emancipation bill passed during his term as New York governor. He also founded the New York Manumission Society. Jay had freed all but one of his slaves by 1810, according to that year's census. Samuel Huntington, the 6th president, oversaw the adoption of the Articles of Confederation. Some historians even consider him the first president of the United States. Samuel Huntington was elected 6th president of the Continental Congress in 1779. He was said to be a brilliant legal mind, despite being entirely self-educated. the Articles of Confederation became the ruling law during his term. So some historians refer to Huntington as the first president of the United States. Huntington died in 1796 while serving as governor of Connecticut. Thomas McKean served as the seventh president of the Continental Congress from July to November 1781. A Pennsylvania native, he moved to Delaware to study law, and he represented that state in the two Continental Congresses. Interestingly, McKean was a Delaware congressman. At the same time, he served as Chief Justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. McKean was a signer of the Articles of Confederation. The forgotten first president, John Hanson. John Hanson was a Nubian man, Moor, a so-called black man. They made him white in history. Plus, to make fun of us, they shot the hidden hand in the picture, letting you know it a hidden agenda. Like we said, George Washington was not actually the first president of the United States. That's right, folks. Today, I'm going to tell you about a man named John Hanson, the real first president under the Articles of Confederation. John Hanson, a Marylander, born in 1721, was the first president of the United States in Congress assembled, serving from November 5th, 1781 to November 3rd, 1782. This was before the Constitution and before the presidential powers as we know them today. Hanson's role was largely ceremonial, but he was pivotal in holding the young nation together. Hanson's accomplishments were impressive. He established the first consular service, the post office department, and chartered a national bank. He also adopted a uniform system of coinage, made progress towards the first census, and signed a treaty with Holland. Plus, he signed all laws, regulations, official papers, and letters, and established the presidential seal. Under the Articles of Confederation, the national government was weak, and the states retained significant power. Hanson's leadership helped navigate these challenges during a fragile time for the new nation. He was chosen unanimously by Congress, which included figures like George Washington, a testament to his influence and leadership. But Hanson's presidency wasn't easy. The troops from the Revolutionary War demanded to be paid, and with no funds available, they threatened to overthrow the new government. Hanson managed to calm the troops and hold the country together, preventing what could have been a disaster. Hanson also ordered all foreign troops off American soil and removed all foreign flags, asserting the new nation's sovereignty. He established the Great Seal of the United States, a symbol still used today, and created key departments like the Treasury, War, and Foreign Affairs. And let's not forget, he declared the fourth Thursday of every November as Thanksgiving Day. Despite his significant contributions, Hanson and the other presidents under the Articles are often forgotten. The Articles of Confederation were eventually replaced by the Constitution due to their ineffectiveness, leading to the stronger central government we know today. So, while George Washington was the first president under the Constitution, John Hanson deserves recognition as the first president of the United States in Congress assembled. Elias Boudinot was the ninth president of the Continental Congress. He was born in Pennsylvania and grew up as a neighbor of Benjamin Franklin's. Boudinot helped finance the Revolutionary War and also supported the work of American spies during the Revolution. He served as director of the U.S. Mint from 1795 to 1805. According to the Museum of the American Revolution, Boudinot was an advocate for women's rights and led a campaign in 1793 to encourage women to participate in New Jersey state politics. Boudinot founded the American Bible Society in 1816 and served as its president until 1821. The 10th president was Thomas Mifflin, a Pennsylvanian who also served as a major general and the first quartermaster general in the Continental Army and a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. Washington lost confidence in Mifflin, though, in a controversy over money management in the Quartermaster's Corps. But Mifflin would be the man to whom the great general delivered his resignation in 1783. Richard Henry Lee was the 11th president of the Continental Congress. A Virginian, Lee had protested the 1765 Stamp Act, was a member of the committee that named Washington Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army, and also was the congressional delegate who introduced the motion that resulted in the Declaration of Independence. The resolution read, in part, that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. He called for a Declaration of Independence, the formation of foreign alliances, and a plan for confederation, according to the document, which is available at the National Archives website. The Continental Congress created 3 committees to study each of Lee's proposals. Action on the latter 2 was postponed until the fall, but members approved the call for a Declaration of Independence on July 2nd, 1776. The 12th president was Massachusetts businessman Nathaniel Gorham, who was elected when John Hancock could not fulfill his second presidential term. He served from 1786 to 1787. Gorham was a signer of the Constitution. Gorham was among the first to oppose the British during the Stamp Act crisis in 1765. Arthur St. Clair served as the 13th president and presided over the Confederation Congress. Born in Scotland, he was the first governor of the Northwest Territory. A military man, St. Clair came to America as a soldier in the French and Indian War. He resigned his commission in 1762, and by the mid-1770s, St. Clair thought of himself as more American than British. Following the Revolutionary War and his time in the Northwest Territory, St. Clair was commissioned a major general and named commander of the U.S. Army. Finally, the 14th president was Cyrus Griffin of Virginia, a protege of George Washington. It was during Griffin's term as president that the Constitution was finalized. He served as president from January 1788 until Washington was inaugurated in 1789. Washington appointed Griffin the first U.S. District Judge in 1790 and served until his death in 1810. Griffin served on the U.S. Court of Appeals, and in that capacity was one of the judges who presided over Aaron Burr's treason trial. So there you have it, folks. These men were the unsung heroes steering America before Washington took the helm. Digging into history sometimes reveals the most fascinating stories. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe for more historical nuggets. See you next time. Curious minds.